Hello, welcome to Abundance Books. My name is Julia and today we're doing our May readathon, the Asian readathon. If you're new here, there is a playlist down below of what we're doing for this year of readathons. You can go ahead and watch that. There will also be the TBR link down below that I did at the beginning of this month, as well as that will link to Cindy's original video explaining what all of the prompts are. It's always weird doing this intro because this is basically just a two-part video, but in this we're going to be reading 5 books. Here are 4 of them, all based around Asian authors in honor of AAPI month. There will be timestamps down below as well if you want to jump to a specific book, but that's really all the preamble I have for you. I guess we can get into it. I'm about 100 pages into the last tale of the Flower Bride. It's on the dust jacket. Trust me. Oh, yeah, on the side. I was like, how do normal hardcovers do it? I'm very tired. Anyway, I'm 100 pages in and I'm really enjoying it. And it's really funny because I'm noticing so much Roshani Chokshi in this. Let me assemble my collection of her books. These are the 3 that I own. I've read the whole Gilded Wolf series. I think the only thing I haven't read is the Star-Touched Queen, so I'm gonna have to get on that. But for Alisha, this book features a living house, and here the house like actually talks, and in Last Tale of the Flower Bride it's more of the vibe of a house. The house speaks to certain people, it likes things, lots of personification in the house, which is something I really enjoy and is taken from that. The Gilded Wolves is set in a hotel in Paris, and we immediately open on a hotel in Paris. There also seems to be a focus on this sort of ethereal, unknowable beauty, which is what one of the characters in here, that's kind of her thing. Layla? Yeah, it has to be Layla. And I'm noticing a lot of parallels there. Layla, I sort of felt like was an insert for Roshani Chokshi a little bit in the way that I feel this is. Sorry, that Indigo is in Last Tale of the Flower Bride. Also, I follow Roshani Chokshi on Instagram and she's so pretty and she just has great hair. And the book was talking about hair and I'm like, she knows what she's talking about. The book was also talking about how the main character's husband is super hot and her husband is also super hot. So lots of parallels to real life. Anyway, the last book I have there is 3 Kisses, 1 Midnight. Now this was co-written with 2 other people, but I'm going to assign the whole thing to her. There's a bit in this about a masquerade ball, and what did we have? A masquerade ball. And there's a character in here who's trying to cast a spell by midnight, and it's very much focusing on Indigo loving magic, trying to do spells and stuff. It's really good. It's written interestingly because Indigo is our main character. She is the Flower Bride, but it's told by her husband, and some chapters flashing back to her childhood told by her childhood best friend. So it's interesting having the main character never actually talk about themselves, but it's beautifully written. The writing in it really is stellar and it's just sort of floaty and magical. I'm hoping that we get into some more plot stuff soon, because a lot of it seems to be people trying to figure out what's going on with Indigo and like, just tell us. There's a lot of talking around things and I'm hoping that we'll start speaking more directly, because I enjoy the floaty, but I need more than the floaty. This is reading very like Erin Morgenstern, which is great for a lot of people, and I certainly see the charm in Erin Morgenstern, but I need a little bit more to sink my teeth into. It's funny because I keep thinking I should tell you like what the book is about, but I kind of don't know. It's not really telling me. The plot that's happening is Indigo's aunt is dying, and so she and her husband have gone to visit her, and then we're also getting childhood flashbacks to her and her friend trying to go to the other world. They have a very interesting relationship, but I'm definitely having a good time reading it. It's the kind of thing that you just kind of sink into and just let it take you away, as long as it's taking me somewhere interesting. I've read the next little bit of Last Tale of the Flower Bride. I'm at 2/3 now and it's starting to bug me. The first problem is just I'm ready for some plot. We're really just kind of living and we need to get somewhere already. It's a lot of recycling the same thing, saying the same thing in different ways. And there's one thing I didn't mention in my last one was that it is very abstract with its time. Like, it gives you a specific time, but it doesn't sort of make sense. So they're talking about how they just got cell phones. So it sounds like the modern day is set in like the 80s or 90s, and then we're going back to her childhood, so a little bit further, but you never really feel rooted in a time, and I think it's a really strange choice to place it and then sort of ignore it. Because my whole thing is like, if you're gonna set something in the 80s or 90s, like, why? What is the difference here? Most of the time it's just an excuse to not have cell phones, which, like, fair, but it just doesn't jive with the sort of magical tone that this is going for. My other big problem with this is that we're not sticking to a magic system. Like, I'm not picky about my fantasy having strict magic rules, but this is just sort of pulling magic from everywhere, and you can't do that. One of the big things they keep talking about is Susan from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, who suddenly can't return to Narnia because she gets too old for it, and they're like, we need to make sure that that doesn't happen to us, which I think is like a fun concept. But then they're also like talking about Fae and just a ton of magical worlds like Oz and Wonderland, and I need some root because not all of those rules play together, and it's bugging me. And I know I'm speaking harshly about it, but this is one of my most anticipated books of all time, and it just, the middle part is lagging. I'm hoping maybe the ending will pick up and change some stuff and we'll get some plot, but like, I'm having a good time reading it. I just want to get somewhere already. Hello, we were doing this closet clean out this morning, spring cleaning all of our old clothes, and I kept finding shirts that I forgot I owned, and I really like this one. Also, glasses that apparently I bought, they're a choice. They're not awful, but like, I don't think it's me, but good to have a backup pair. Anyway, I'm here to talk to you about The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi, and everything I said in the last clip, it kind of doesn't matter anymore. There was some stuff that happened at the end of this that definitely makes you look at the book in a new light. I don't want to call it a twist, but there are some things that happen in here that change what the rest of the story is, which is so frustrating because I can't talk about this. I might end up making a dedicated review, but the last bit definitely saved the book for me. There's some really interesting ideas and interesting ways that the two timelines eventually intersect. It just took too long to get there, and like the ideas that it's talking about I really like, but it didn't quite fall through on them. I don't remember if I was talking to about the bridegroom in here. He's like a fairy tale historian, maybe not a historian, but like he knows a lot about myths and stuff. And part of his goal is that when he was young, he had a brother, and then one day he couldn't find the brother, and his mom was like, what are you talking about? You never had a brother, kind of thing. Which was very interesting, and I just, that was a good hook for me that I wanted to mention it. And everything comes together in an interesting way that I can't tell you about. I would definitely recommend this book if you are already a fan of Roshani Chokshi. It's very fun to see all of the things that are referenced in this that you can tell from her other writing. Though I do want to say, for this being an adult debut, the majority of the plot is in Azure's perspective, which is them being teenagers, like kids to teenagers. And so for an adult debut, this still focuses a lot on non-adults. And I want to like explain what I was talking about with no plot in here. Basically on page like 40, you hear about Azure for the first time and that nobody's seen her since graduation. And you're like, okay, cool, something happened at graduation. Graduation doesn't happen until like the last 20 pages. So literally the whole time you're like, something's gonna happen at graduation. Just tell me what it is. And it's one of those, like, there's a bunch of characters there who know and just aren't telling you. And it's very frustrating to do that for 300 pages. But it justified itself a lot in the end, maybe not for the length, but for the style of storytelling. And the ending was definitely my favorite part of the whole thing. I'm gonna end up giving it 4 stars. Really liked it. Really appreciate what it's doing. I think it's a really quality book, and I think people will like it as long as you go in with the right expectations. Anyway, let's talk about my next read, Partners in Crime. which I am already halfway into. I really love it. This is by Alisha Rai. I mispronounced her name before. It's Alisha Rai because I'm doing the audiobook and I learned that. And it's just so much fun. It's just like pure adrenaline rom-com that I'm loving. So the setup for this is our main character. Her name is Mira or Amira. Her aunt has recently died, and so she goes to the lawyer to do the will stuff, and the lawyer ends up being her ex-boyfriend who she was matched with through a matchmaker, and there's a whole bit about the matchmaking process. And they somehow together get caught up in some of her father's schemes. Her father used to be a bit of a con man, and so they are now on this adventure to like clear their names, find the treasure, save the day, and it's so much fun. The majority of it is set in Vegas, which is just such a fun location for all of this stuff to be happening. All of the little side characters are great. Their dynamic is great because it's definitely like a second chance thing, because they were together for 6 months seriously dating, and then she sort of dumped him out of nowhere. So they have a fun dynamic, but I don't feel like you're missing out on anything. They've also been keeping secrets from each other, so it's sort of like learning who they are for the first time again. I think it's just pure rom-com, pure fun. There's a bit of a mystery you're trying to solve along the way too. Like the stakes are high, but it still feels fun and relaxing, and I'm loving it so much. It's bumming me out that I don't have a copy to hold up and show you, but like if you're interested in a rom-com, if you're interested in a good time, like hell yeah. I will say halfway through we have not had a steamy scene, but we have had characters reflecting on previous steamy times, so I think it's gonna get explicit in a minute. It's the kind of book where I'm like, I'm supposed to be reading other things at the same time, and I just want to sit there and listen to this book and have the best time ever. So I will be shocked if my next update is not extremely positive. It's food time, so we're very angry. Come here. Thank you. No, you can't eat me. I have just, like in the last 5 minutes, finished Partners in Crime by Alisha Rai, and I really loved it. The ending did something that I completely was not expecting. We're trying to find someone who only has an alias, and I was like 100% sure that this is who the person was, and if it wasn't them, I had a backup person. And it was not. There were 2 reveals that I could not have seen coming. But I really liked this book. It reminded me a lot of The Wedding Crasher, just in that fun rom-com way. Lots of I don't think it's as good as The Wedding Crasher, but that's like ultimate tier. This was really good, really fun. The Vegas setting was really good. I think it had a good balance of emotional stuff with fun stuff. There was some steam, but it didn't super work for me. It was fine, but it's definitely a personal preference thing. And they also used the term pregnant pause at least 6 times, which was super weird. You know when there's just a phrase and why are you licking my shoulder? You know, you just hear a phrase and then you can't unhear it, and it happened 6 times. It was a good time. Highly recommend for a fun rom-com. Definitely enjoyed the com more than the rom. No, I wouldn't say that. I really liked the direction that the story took. The couple were really good together, and there were some fun reveals, fun side characters. Nothing but good things to say. I think I'm gonna give it a 5. I don't have like a super strong feeling toward that 5, but I don't have any negative feelings. So that's a 5 from me. Oh, I also wanted to say I did the audiobook of this one, and I did really like the audiobook. But it's funny, so there's a man and a woman both doing it, and the woman is like performing, like she is giving her all, she's giving a lot of expression. It's very theater kid, I guess, like just over pronouncing things in a good way, like in a way I think an audiobook kind of requires. And then the man's just sort of there. He has a very quiet and monotone voice, and you get used to it after a while. It's just anytime you switch chapters, you're just like, oh, this is what performance is. So far, very successful. On to the next one. which actually we can talk about now. I just got the audiobook again for Our Missing Hearts, and I'm planning on doing it exclusively through audio. What do I remember about this when I read it in like November? It's about our main character, Bird, who is Chinese American, and his dad is a professor, and they live in like housing at the university, and his mother was an activist and she disappeared. It's unclear if she went into hiding or not, but he thinks she might be trying to contact him. And you're getting a bit of stuff about his younger childhood and some friends that he's made and stuff. It's weird, and there's definitely a secret society, like an underground society kind of vibe to it that I haven't quite figured out. And it's just very political. Not that books shouldn't be political, but like this has a message and that is the book. I would rather have there be a story and there is a message attached to it. I hope that doesn't come across to me. This is just like, it's talking about America first. American culture is their big thing. Lots of patriotism. And like, yeah, is it a dystopian? Sure, but it's a little too current to feel fully dystopian. Anyway, I'll make some good progress on this. Definitely a big tone shift from the last one. So I finished Our Missing Hearts by Celeste. This is the naked hardback and it's gorgeous. I think it's so pretty. Yeah, I didn't mean to finish it quite so fast. It just sort of happened. I had the audiobook at 3 times speed and a lovely day for hammocking, so I barreled through this really fast. And I haven't decided what my rating is. I have no idea, because I think I went into this with such low expectations that anytime I was having a good time, I was like, I'm not having a good time. Like trying to talk myself out of it. Look at this child on the top of my chair. Hi. Have fun. Very low plot. You never really get forward momentum on this story is my big problem with it. I also feel like I want to clarify what I said when I was like, this is too political. I think it's too real world while pretending it's not. I think that a story like this that focuses a lot on relocating children, that's a big point of it. If you oppose PACT, which is the Patriot Act, sort of. If you oppose it, then that's seen as like an endangerment to your child. You're basically a communist, and sometimes children get rehomed. And the acknowledgements talk a bit about how it's inspired by real life examples, but not based on real life examples. And I think that that's just sort of both worst of both worlds. I think if you wanted to do something like that, you either had to go more realistic and like actual historical events or something, or you have to go like magic, you know? This was just sort of like vaguely dystopia, but 90% our world kind of thing. It never really set itself in a time either, so like there was no world building involved. And the number one issue with this book is that there are no quotation marks. People speak, there's no quotation marks. It happens all the time. There's no explanation as to why that is happening. Honestly, it kind of feels like a misprint, which means that the only way it is even possible for me to read this book is by doing the audiobook and following along, and like that was fine. Should a book be knocked down if you have to read it via audio? But then I think of Daisy Jones, which is the audiobook, but I view that as like a feature and not a bug. So is it hypocritical of me if I say that this is bad? I also just really hated the ending of this. I thought that it was dumb. People do stupid things that are easily preventable, that they like actively talk about the solution to it and then they decide not to do it. It wasn't a satisfying ending, and I understand why you wouldn't want a story like this to wrap up with a perfect bow on it. It just felt like we didn't get anywhere. Like they're basically in the same situation at the end of the book than they were at the beginning. They're not. That's not like a spoiler, but like I just wish that there was more plot and more momentum in this, and like even the writing was fine, but I didn't latch onto it at all. So I think my problem is like I was fully expecting this to be a 1-star, and I think I'm giving it a 2, and I think that's why I feel conflicted. Like there were moments of 3s and moments of like really good the Celeste that I know and love, but yeah, this isn't it. But I am happy that I read it. I'm reading this for a challenge, and I'm glad that I was able to get through it as easily as I could. I should mention also the audiobook was narrated by Lucy Liu,
and I think that that was a bad choice. It wasn't a bad audiobook, but there are certain things that you have to do when you're narrating an audiobook that she just sort of didn't do. She was just sort of acting. It's like having Chris Pratt in the Mario movie. It's fine, but maybe there was a better option out there. The Miracles of the Namiya General Store is finally happening. I read the first like 20 pages and I really wasn't feeling it, and I was really afraid that I was gonna DNF this book after hyping it up for myself for like 3 years, but then it got good and I'm really excited about what it's doing. This is translated from Japanese, and I find with all of the Japanese stuff that I've read, they do something interesting with format. There's like a shtick to it or something. So the idea with this is, as I've mentioned many times, there's this magical general store where letters are passed through time. So the book opens with these 3 guys, gives very little description of them. It's hard to sort of differentiate them. But they've just done some sort of crime. It doesn't tell you what the crime is or anything, but they need some place to lie low, and so they find this abandoned general store and slowly come to figure out that it is unstuck from time, and they find letters from this woman asking for advice, and they answer them for her. So that's the first part, and I really enjoyed it. It's this woman's issue where she's should I say this? Yeah, you find it out immediately. Her boyfriend has been diagnosed with cancer, but she is going to the Olympics and she sort of can't decide what to do with her life in that way. And it was really interesting, and you got to know her and the guys in the store, figure out all of the time travel-y things. It was really fun. Then the second part is about this brand new character you've never heard of before. What's his name? Katsuro, who is an aspiring musician. He walks by the Namiya General Store and is like, I don't know what to do with my life. My music isn't really going anywhere. So he drops a letter in and he gets the letter back, but you don't get anything from the now timeline, the guys who are stuck in the general store. You don't hear from them at all. So it's just this guy dropping in a letter, getting this random response, and like how he deals with it. And I think it's such a cool idea. So I looked forward a little bit. Anyway, the start of chapter 3, I don't know any of these names, so I'm assuming it's then going to be sort of episodic in that way, which I think is really fun. Also in the second story, because the guy grew up there, you sort of get more backstory on the general store, which is really fun. It's broken into 5 parts and I think it's really fun. Am I getting a 5-star feeling from it like I was hoping? Maybe not, but I'm enjoying it. I find that Japanese translations, I'm trying to decide if I mean specifically Japanese ones, but I think I do because like Frederick Backman is translated, but they read sort of dry. And I had a big problem in the first one because they sort of don't talk the way that people talk, which I think is the nature of the translation. Like they keep saying yo all the time and bingo, and just the phrasing is never quite feels natural. But the second story was much less dialogue heavy, and the prose I really enjoyed. It's so cute. I just love looking at this cover and all of the little things that are incorporated. Like the moon plays a part at one point. It's a good little book. And it poses some interesting questions. There's ideas between the advice that the guys give and what the people actually end up doing with the advice, how those things differ. So the next 2 sections. The first one was about the son of the guy who started doing the advice for the general store and talking about how it got started and the types of kids that he interacted with. And that was a good one. Lots of good musings in it. Mr. Namiya is a great character. And then the one after that was about this guy who just really liked the Beatles. It was a lot I get it, but it was too much Beatles for me. Especially when the other subplot for that guy is infinitely more interesting, but you are also finding what the connections between all of these stories are. Kitty. So that's fun to do along the way. Everyone is connected to at least one of the other stories in some way. Do you see your whiskers go by? Anyway, I'm on the last section now. It looks like that is returning to the 3 boys who are in the store in present day. So I've got like 70 pages and I'm gonna go outside. It's a beautiful day. I do get taken out of this book pretty regularly though because of the way people speak. I just read something where they said, "I'm just busting your chops," which is like, it's not incorrect English, but it's not the way that people speak. So the translation in the dialogue I think is maybe hard sometimes, but the translation in the prose, like, I've never had a problem with. I really enjoy the writing of it. And maybe these guys are just weird and talk like that. All right, Namiya General Store done. I can't believe after years and years and years of owning this book, it's finally done. I've read outside. I'm gonna have a sunburn tomorrow. I can just feel it. But this was really fun. The last chapter was from the 3 guys in the store, and you get their backstory of what the crime that they did in the beginning was and the consequences of that, and it was very fun. The way that everything comes together is really fun. I think the reason that I can't give this a 5 is I never really got into the characters. It feels very surface level with a lot of it, and the characters don't really get emotional. That could definitely also be a Japanese thing or a translation thing, but I'm really glad that I read this. It is what I hoped that it would be. It just, you know, there's an it factor to things sometimes. It did sort of remind me of Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. Definitely not the same, but the vibes of a place unstuck from time and thinking through the things in your past, meeting new people. There's something here. So yeah, I'm very happy that I am now going to be able to recommend this very widely. And I'm also excited because the Literally Dead book club just picked a Keigo Higashino for one of their picks. So I'm gonna get to read a thriller or a horror from this author too, which is gonna be really exciting to see what that's like. Anyway, with that, we're on to our next book, which I know I said was going to be Lunar Love, but I picked this for a book by an Asian author, and I already started reading another one, so we're gonna take that one instead. And that book is One in a Million by Adiba Jaigirdar. This is a story about 4 girls who are on the Titanic. Why am I so small? I'll stand here. This is a story, this is a story about 4 girls who are on the Titanic, and they are trying to do a heist. So it's some fun historical fiction. I'm enjoying it, but I am finding it a little slow for sure. And also very curious how this is gonna work when, you know, the Titanic. The cast of girls is really fun. They come from a wide variety. It's also doing a good job of showing racism, I guess I want to say. Like, we have non-white girls here, and the way that they are treated is sort of off-page racism. So like, it's still accurate to the time, but you're not sad. There might be a little sapphic romance blossoming, which is very fun. And just getting to see the Titanic, their backstories, what they're planning on stealing this collection of poetry that is very special and has jewels encrusted in the cover. And at this point, I'm like 60% of the way through, and the Titanic isn't Titanicking yet, and so I'm ready for it to do something. It's very samey. We're investigating and figuring stuff out. There are moments, like, I don't want to sell this book short. I think it is really good. It is YA, which definitely explains a lot of my issues with it. I think that if YA Titanic sapphic heist appeals to you, you will have a good time in this. And just like that, we're done. I finished A Million to One and I enjoyed it. I think the ending was the strongest part. Well, like the epilogue part of the ending. I had a realization that I don't think that heist books work for me, because last year I read
Portrait of a Thief in May for the Asian Readathon, and this is a heist story and I hated it. So maybe there's something to that. I think just like you can't get the momentum in a heist story. There's a lot of like talking about planning and I don't know. But the epilogue was surprisingly sweet and I cried a little bit. That was really unexpected, but I still have to stick with my 3 stars because I think there's a good story in there. It just wasn't beefed up enough. There was really only the one plot line. Maybe this could have benefited from having more flashbacks or something. I'm not sure. And it was also super weird because, spoilers for the Titanic, they hear a big crash and don't figure out for another like 10% that the ship is actually sinking. So all of that momentum is sort of taken out and it's just not ideal. But I would still recommend it. 3 stars is good. It just wasn't a perfect book for me, but I think that a lot of people will really enjoy it. So in conclusion, we read 5 books. No new favorites, 1 5-star in Partners in Crime, but I was thinking about knocking it down to a 4, but I don't think I'm going to. I think a thing that happened was like really good and is worthy of its 5-star status. After that, 2 4 stars. I think I'd give The Edge to Namiya. This is an excellent book in retrospect, but it's hard to be in it. It's the kind of thing you have to read twice. Whereas this is a bit of an unfolding mystery with lots of timelines, but it's very easy to follow. This is the thing I think I would recommend most out of this, most broadly. And then our 3-star in A Million to One, and coming in last is Celeste, which I'm not surprised by because I started it, but I am disappointed in, though this was better than I thought it was going to be after those initial 60 pages. But this one I definitely don't feel that I can broadly recommend because there's no quotation marks and I will never be okay with that. That is it for this month's readathon. Come back in just a couple of days. I'll be announcing what the next one is. I'm very excited about this one. If you have interest in finding out what it is, subscribe and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.